Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday morning midweek show, Sidelines. Man, I want to thank everybody for listening, watching on YouTube, on the website, mobile, at your laptop, on your phone, in your boat, in your plane. It could be on the tractor. I've got people that listen while they're out there farming. Most of the rice has already been picked up, but it's the beans and the corn still hadn't been cut. But we got listeners, followers all over. And let me just say thank you. And we want you to know how much we appreciate you and being part of our growing show. And we have the best guests. We'll start off with Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net this morning over in Springdale. Said he's not feeling really great this morning, but he is hardcore, old school, got to show up. And, if you know what, we need more people like Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Dudley is in the first segment. We'll be joined right after that. Jake Wimberly from ESPN 105.9, The Drive, the afternoon drive down in Jackson, Mississippi. Hour number 2, Mitch Davis, the MitchDavisShow.com from North Mississippi, Tupelo, New Albany, covering Mississippi. We've got a lot to talk about with him. Jordan Hill checks in 24/7 Sports on the Georgia Bulldogs. Will be in with us in the fourth segment. And they got a fun one. That's going to be just sort of a let's go and have fun and take over the stadium type of deal as they play Vanderbilt. Thought I'd see a lot more fight out of Vanderbilt this year. Just unbelievable. I want to see them succeed. I think nobody wants to see somebody lose. Bill James, one of our members of the Club 250, his son, Christian James, member of that team. They work as hard as everybody else does. Vanderbilt going to have a tough one, though, against Georgia Saturday. 6 days a week show, folks, 25 shows a month, over 300 shows a year. We are here, and we talk about college football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting. We talk a little pro, a little Major League Baseball. Braves, by the way, play up in Philadelphia today. Man, it's a great time of year, Dudley. Baseball merging in with football, basketball's cranking up. We're going to have the practices. I mean, they never really stop. But let's focus on you. First off, thanks for joining us this morning, and hope you get to feeling better. My wife had some kind of third world funk. I don't know what it was. I've just begun to think that there's a bunch of Petri dishes just in a long assembly line that are just turned loose because there's people are getting sick with stuff now that I've never seen these kind of symptoms. It's strange, but hope you get to feeling better. But
well, I appreciated my granny and pop used to call it a sinking spell, so I guess that's what I'm having.
Yeah, and remember another old South term for when people couldn't keep their head. Mm-hmm. That boy, he's got dropsy. we don't know what dropsy is, but man, I hope you get to feeling better. One thing, the bottom line is, Audrey and I were watching last night on TV talking about the Hogs, and we've got so many friends in Memphis and over here in Cross County that, I mean, they're all Razorbacks. And they're frustrated, but you've got all kind of people saying we should do this, we should do that. Let's hear what you've got to say about where the Hogs are, because you look at it, even though you cover the Hogs, you cover them objectively like a pro.
Well, I actually thought at this point they would be 3-4. I thought they would beat BYU. I mean, the other losses are not surprising to me, but the way that they're losing the games has been. This offense has gone from one of the most productive in the SEC, especially running the ball, to really, for lack of a better way to put it, a pathetic outfit right now. It has not been an outfit that can get enough yards. I mean, 174 total yards against Texas A&M. Better, of course, against Ole Miss, but not good when you needed to get first downs in different situations. They're unable to protect the quarterback. The quarterback is pressing because of that. It's not, it's easy to focus on the offensive line, and certainly, that's been a weak spot, I think. But there's plenty of culpability to go around on this football team. It starts with the head coaches. from Sam Pittman on down. Obviously, I think at the end of the season, unless this thing really gets turned around quick, you're going to have to make some staff adjustments. I do believe that at this point, I do believe that Coach Pittman will get another year to kind of get it turned around. But let's just be honest, it's not headed in the right direction right now. It was, and it's not now. And as much as I like the guy, as I said, he's a good football dude and all that. As you said, I'm objective enough to make, a clear decision and have a clear opinion that you don't have apathy right now. That's what you had when Chad Morris was here, but you've got a lot of anger right now, and it's valid criticism. I guess the number one thing I was glad to see last weekend is they finally got under center and did the tush push that's so popular in the NFL now to get a first down. So that's one step forward, but it seems like there's a step forward and a couple steps back each week.
Yeah. Look, here's a question that I wanted to ask you because it just came in on a text. Ask Dudley. He's a smart football guy, smart guy, period. He used a word the other day, a phrase, a term, and I was bragging about you talking with a friend, a writer yesterday. I said, he used the term metaphorically. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dudley, that's any young writer. Like we had Trip Keeter on last week, my fraternity brother from Heber Springs nephew. He was really impressed with you, and he wants to, connect with you and learn from you.
We have connected. I'm gonna do what I can to help him out because it seems like a really good dude. He's got the passion and energy, and like me, who has the face for radio, he's got the face for TV and all that. So.
Hey, look, you know what? You're great everywhere. And I'm going to tell you what, I appreciate you doing that. And that's why the guests that I bring on here, man, we all share the show, retweet, help each other out. It is a great community. It's a family that we've got on here. And I really, really, really appreciate it. But I wanted to ask you, this question comes up so many times. The quarterback throwing the ball into the ground, spiking it at the end of the game. And I can't ever remember what the technical rule is, why that's not intentional grounding.
Well, that's a good question. I guess that somewhere along the way in the rules, they allowed you to do that. Now the receiver would be pretty close. It could only be, a center guard, a tackle, a tight end away. But I'm guessing that somewhere along the way, that was a rule that was, put in to allow that to happen. Because I remember back in the day, I'm old enough that I remember back in the day when Coach Broyles and other people said this forward pass thing will never catch on, and 2 out of 3 things can go bad when you throw a pass. So I'm sure they figured that out, way to stop the clock and all that. But but that makes sense. If ever there was intentional grounding, that's intentional grounding. If you do the semantics of the letter of the law there.
Yeah, it is that. I got Matt in Memphis, Hogs need to find their offense. Where did it go? And you alluded to that a minute ago about the offensive. I'm with you. You and I both, you can like a coach, you can like anybody, but if they're not doing a good job and you don't see any hope, you have to make changes. I think Tim Horton said, and I like Sam Pittman, and I agree with you. He needs to come back next year and fix it. His staff may look different, but I think he is a guy that can build your program.
First of all, I did not take a stance on whether he
I
did
know.
come back or not.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about that. Now again, that's a decision made above my pay grade. I'm a writer and an opinion guy. I'll sit here and I'll judge it as the season goes along. As I'm judging it after 6 games, I'm saying this is not working. There's got to be some changes, and definitely I think there has to be assistant coach changes. But just want to be clear, I'm not the guy, and I've never been the guy to call for somebody's head. That's not my job.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say it like that. I in my opinion, what he's done a lot of really positive things. He stabilized the program after Chad Morris was there. But you're right, and that's the thing. You have to be. I tell clients this: a stock certificate. It is merely a piece of paper. Don't fall in love with it. It doesn't know where you bought it, what price you want to sell it. So don't get too emotional. And that's why people get hurt so bad in the investment world. Way too emotional. And I'm with you. Looking at it objectively, it's not going in the right direction. And I like how you say it, because you can't just say, well, they just had some tough breaks. No, it's not going in the right direction. Matt, in Memphis, though, they need to find the offense. Here you are. You're going to be playing Alabama on the road. This isn't an Alabama team that's putting up 45 and 50 points a game. If you go back and look at the end of Jalen Hurts and then Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, they went from averaging around 31 points a game to 45 points. So you had to score 46, 47, 48 to beat them. This is the game that could go a full 60 and be, 27-20 for the winner, just like that A&M game last week. They're not going to get – neither one of these teams is built to be in a track meet. And I got to ask you this. What's Arkansas's path to victory? How could they do it? How could they do it?
Well, here's something interesting about this game as I've looked it over and tried to dive in, to do a deep dive into the stats and all that. Alabama's obviously 5-1, number 11 in the country. This is a team that's had 3 less penalties than Arkansas. 43 penalties on the year. Arkansas had 46. We talk about how many penalties Arkansas has, and it's unbelievable the amount that they have. And that's with 0 in one game. Remember, they thought they had it fixed against Texas A&M. 0 penalties against Texas A&M. Didn't come back with 9 or 10 last weekend. But Alabama's had 43 penalties for over 300 yards. Yeah. Arkansas 46 penalties for over 300 yards. There's very few teams in the NCAA who have had more penalties than them, but they're going different way. Alabama is a team that has enough talent, has an established coach, has a situation where they're able to overcome that. Arkansas is not. You ask me how Arkansas can go down there and win the football game, or at least go down there and be competitive. It starts with not having the penalties. And then it starts with not having turnovers. Yeah. Then it starts with you protecting your quarterback and him not having to press or make decisions. He's not had a good year. I think he'd be the first one to tell you. Yeah. I do think that the theory that Dan Enos has come in and tried to change him to a pro-style quarterback instead of more of an RPO guy is valid. I think that has happened, and I think it hadn't gone well. The head coach is sitting there on Monday making assessments like that. He's saying we can't protect him. We got to get him out of the pocket. Got to do something different. Yeah. Obviously, I think Dan Enos has been a very good coach over the course of his career, and a long career and a very good career. We go back to the 2015, 2016 years when he was here and they were having great offense, but it's just not working this year. Whatever is going on in the offense, you got to change quickly. And can you, 6 games into the season? I mean, you're halfway through. You got to do something. I mean, the guy, KJ, again, he's making bad decisions, some of them on his own, some of them because – I mean, if I had people running at me all the time, I'd probably make bad decisions right.
Yeah, and that's a tough part about it. Dan Enos' track record, and we talked about it all summer coming in the spring. It always has been good. And something suddenly doesn't work, and the coaches are more frustrated than anybody. But then the penalties, that's a discipline issue. Let's talk about the amount of time that you have in practice every day, and then how much you spend on special teams, and then how much do you spend on penalties? Because I knew Joe Pipkin was a friend of our family in Memphis, and he had a great insurance agency, but he was also for 33 years an official that did big-time Southern Independent games. And you talk about a pro and objective. There's no influencing this guy. He was the consummate pro. And in 1986, I'm in Memphis with my parents at dinner, and I'm talking with him, and he said, at that time, Jimmy Johnson was bringing him down during the week to practices at Miami to work with the team to try to cut down on penalties. And there's so much of that goes on. And Dudley, you're a hell of an athlete. You played over there in Newport. You've been around games, whatever, basketball, football, a long time. How many times do you have to tell somebody the penalties, don't do this, don't do that before you yank them and just sit them? You don't want to.
And let's be honest. There's one guy, Brady Latham, who's been a great player for them over the years, who has just got the yips or whatever this year.
Yeah.
Is his coach. He was asked about, Coach Pittman was asked about Brady this year. These pre-snap penalties, and that's been the big thing. It's not, they've had a few targeting penalties, a few, jumping off sides, but for the vast majority, it's been pre-snap penalties on the offensive line. You can blame it on the crowd, but they've done it here at home as well. I mean, as you said, it's a discipline issue, and if a discipline issue, in a football game would lead you to believe that there's discipline issues off the field. Now, I'm not saying there is. I haven't done enough investigation, but it would lead you to think that that's usually the case.
Yeah.
Over the course of my 60 years on this earth, if you're having issues on the field, there's usually an axis of where that's coming from outside of the football field, off the football field. And I want to go back to Brady Latham. He's been a great player for Arkansas while he's been here. I went and watched him in high school, was very impressed with him there. I've been very impressed with him while he's here, except this year when he's just, as his head coach says, he's flinching, he's jumping, and there's no excuse. Brady knows that. Arkansas knows that. I'm not sitting here, ripping the kid. I'm sitting here saying, looking at it, and he's a better player than he showed this year. And I don't know what it is. If I could tell him I'd quit this sports writing business and earn money as a consultant, who I hear gets much more money than sports writers.
Well, you know what? You think about, we're talking about this one player and the penalties, and nobody wants to be singled out, but man, I've had some ass chewings in my life that would make most people be in tears. They've come from my parents. They've come from teachers, coaches, friends. Certainly my wife. My dad yesterday goes, "Boy, why do you keep referring to your wife? She's a good-looking woman, calling her Mildred." And I'm like, well, I mean, I always just think of Mildred from the Feinbaum show, but Audrey, her name is great Southern name, Audrey Ann. And, you know what Hank Williams' wife was named? Hank Sr.'s wife was named, don't you? Audrey.
No.
Miss Audrey. Remember that great song with Waylon Jennings, The Conversation, about Hank, let's talk about your daddy. And he said he sure did love Miss Audrey Ann Raised in Hell. And I'm convinced my wife was named after Audrey. Oh, she's actually named after Audrey Hepburn, and that's her favorite actor. But Dudley, you're right. You're right on target about you're not paid to be a fan. You're not paid to call for people's heads and make sure I did not mean that. I was just.
I understand.
I cannot help. I'm going to admit it. I do like Sam Pittman a lot. He's just someone. But also, I've been reading the text from a lot of my Arkansas friends. And trust me, when you live in Memphis and you spend as much time in Cross County as we do, all 847 square miles of it, it's a big county. The Hog fan, they're frustrated. They're going, we love the guy, but why isn't it working? And you just said a couple of things. I don't know if it's stuff off the field, but you'll investigate it. God love you because you actually will. You'll go find out. You and Otis Kirk and the people on that Hogville staff. Tell people real quick, because we got some more. We got a bunch of questions. I hadn't even gotten to them coming in here. But tell people, I'm looking at Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Chris Aiken, my friend over there. Man, 115 dogs they're training over there. Absolutely gorgeous complex up there in Jonesboro, folks. And we have Chris on talking about his dogs. There's a waiting list to get into the kennel, but they've got litters on the ground. He does very selective breeding with some of the best hunting retriever champions, AKC, senior, master level. You get into FC, AFC, NFC, Chris Aiken, Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Absolutely love these people. They're listening right now as they train. Probably been up since about 5:30. Dudley, when you look at this roster, you made a comment. You thought there were 60 players that
which
could
I'm
play.
taking back.
And I know you did last week. That's what I'm saying. You took it back. And I was thinking about this. What's the number that you took it back down to, the adjustment? Because I respect that, and that's smart.
You take a look at them in practice during the preseason. You look at what they've done from their previous stops, as you have to do, with portal transfers and this year. I thought that the program was getting to a level that it had 60 or so athletes that you could count on to play significant roles. Now, I think they've still got those 60 athletes, but I think about half of them are not living up or not playing to their potential. And I go back to that's a coaching issue, a development issue. 6 games in, you shouldn't have these situations. It's somewhere between 44 and 60. I do think it's better, in terms of people that you have the potential to count on. Maybe I'll go 48 to 50, something like that. But I'm back down from the 60 that I had at the start of the year. I'm also back down from the potential of, I made a statement at the start of the year. I thought this offensive line has the potential to be a better one than down the line than the one it was last year that was successful and had so many yards. I still think that the young kids on the line, Patrick Kudus, Marion Harris, Andrew Chambly, some of the others. One of the things that has hurt the offensive line, and people don't want to hear about injuries, but Devin Manuel, if he could have been healthy and been manning the left tackle, I think they would have been better off. And that's been the case. But you've got to have enough that if you lose one guy, it can't make a house of cards fall down.
Yeah.
I do think the offensive line has some great young players who are not there yet. I mean, that's just simple as I can say it, that they're not playing up, they're playing at their experience level right now is what I should say. Let's be honest, the offensive line, the older guys have not been the leaders, have not executed the way they should have this year. That's on the offensive line, the players. That's on the offensive line coach, who is under severe scrutiny up here. And that's on the head coach, especially since the head coach has been known as an offensive line guru.
Yeah. Well, when you think about trying to change the personality of a team in the middle of the season, that's hard. There are a lot of reasons, but, your habits are, you become what you are. You may be whatever you resolve yourself to be. Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson. It's on the barracks at VMI when you go into the dorm. It's right there in scripted in stone. And I think that if you're consistently making mistakes week after week after week, that's who you are. I mean, how many
you
times?
Are what your record says you are.
Yeah, exactly. And it was brought up. I was talking to a Tennessee fan last night about Joe Milton. I mean, he's really good, but if not now, when is he going to figure out how to throw the short and intermediate pass? I mean, KJ Jefferson, we all know he's one of the most likable people around. He's from 15 minutes from Vaught Hemingway Stadium, and he looked lost Saturday night. I hate that for him. And somebody was asking me, can he come back again next year?
I don't think so. Eligibility-wise, I think he's out of it unless they come up with some new rule, as they do seemingly all the time. I mean, I don't know if you know, but one of the things that has been floated and is probably going to pass is the ability to not be limited to 25, initial counters each year. It's basically go fill up your roster to 85. Which I think is going to pass if it hadn't already. You talk about wild west. I've mentioned that with college football and athletics. It's just, if that's the case, it's just going to be. I'm gonna. They always say you can't tell the players without a roster. My God, I mean, BYU brought in 60. Colorado brought in 70. The average NCAA team brought in 35 last year, and that's going to be the low point, I think, for here on out.
This is it. Okay, let's elaborate on that. Philip Marshall, who I love, Philip Marshall, had him on the show about 3 weeks ago. 54-year veteran writer, and I want to always give credit where it is due. And also think about a great quote. My friend Vince Thompson with Melt in Atlanta, they're in Buckhead, great branding company. They do the Final Four, Coca-Cola, all those Aflac commercials with Saban. He said, Mr. Woodruff, one of the Coca-Cola people, told him, he said, Vince, you'll have all the success in life that you want, that you can dream of, if you work hard, as long as you don't mind who gets the credit. You know, I like that. All right, here's what Philip Marshall said about this now, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but give him credit. First, a little history. The now defunct limit of 25 scholarships per year was put in place to keep schools, obviously, from over-signing kids, simply to keep them from signing with other schools. The new rule allows a school to sign as many as they want, as long as they don't go over the limit overall aggregate of 85. This will only make it easier for schools to cut players just to get better players. I hope the people behind all of this are happy. We're seeing the real kickback. And Dudley, I remember when I was in school at Auburn, at the end of the year, we were on the quarter system. In June, friends of mine on the team, you'd go in there and meet with Coach Dye, your position coach, talk about your future, where, you know, your first, second, third, where they saw you. And they would make it as clear as they could, you know, what your path to starting time and playing time was. But most guys back then went home in the summer and had a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a different world now. But what do you think? What I just read you from Philip Marshall, let's kind of extrapolate some information from all that, but it's great information.
It's, I mean, it is simply professional football. College football has entered the professional football ranks in the fact that you can waive players, you can acquire them from other teams, you can do things that you used to do under the table, over the table now with the NIL collectives. You know, and why I'm pointing that out, I hear a lot of fans upset because KJ got a car out of the NIL. I think that's the reason he's not playing as good. I hear them upset because Sam Pittman's making $5 to $6 million a year, depending on incentives and all that. It doesn't matter if he's making $1 million or $6 million. The job is there to be done. It's not getting done right now. Y'all quit using that as an excuse. I mean, just say, if you don't think he's getting the job done, just say he's not getting the job done. We live in America. Yeah. If I could get $6 million, if Jimmy Sexton could get me $6 million from Hogville, I'd let him. It wouldn't change the way I go about doing things. You know, I think I'm pretty focused on how I go about doing things. I think that it's as if the people who trot that out as $6 million will go to work the next day and don't want to get a raise.
Yeah,
I mean, come on. Yeah. But I am deterred there. But yes, I do think it is professional football. I think college football has been a business instead of a sport for a long time. It's now a professional business. It has every aspect of the NFL now, except for a salary cap and all that. The cap hit that KJ is going to, have if you bring him back as a quarterback, Rocket Sanders as a tailback, all those situations. It is professional, and it is, we just need to get used to it. It ain't changing. And again, I talk about it every time I turn around. There's a new rule that's allowing it to become even more of an NFL-like situation. Yeah,
I like your take on that. That's a great way to look at it, because it is capitalism. And in my other profession as a financial advisor on our team, again, we always meet with families. Nobody ever gives out $5, $10, $20 million to 18, 19-year-old kids. It's incentive-based trust, age-banded. But this is a capitalist society. We're the greatest country in the history of the world. Yeah, it's okay. You know what? And I think this, in Dudley, you talk to these student athletes. I did. I know when I talk to them and they're like, 200,000. I mean, that's great and all, but you're right. Because I did say, what about sticking it out? And they're saying, it is kind of a silly reason to leave for a couple 100,000, because in the big scheme, if you play at Arkansas and, you don't have the greatest record, but you stay out of trouble and you go to class, you get your degree. We had Nathan Perotti on the show with us Saturday morning. walk on, played at Arkansas. Dave Cody, my friend from Austin, sports anchor, he covered him all through high school at Lake Travis. Man, I almost got my ass kicked because I said he went to Westlake the other day. No. I mean, bam! Right.
That'd be like saying I was from Batesville, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Saying I was from Batesville.
Almost through the.
I'm people in Batesville, but I'm just saying.
Yes, there are. But he goes, no, Lake Travis. I'm like, man, my apologies. What a great young man. And I said, Nathan, you walked on, and he's what I talked about, and you talked about. He worked his ass off, played special teams, did whatever the coaches needed him to do. He's a Razorback for life, RFL. And I said, let's think about this, Nathan. What'd you get your degree in? He said, business. I said, okay. So you can say, I graduated from University of Arkansas from the Walton College of Business. Wow. I said, you've got way better than NIL. And when you come back into Arkansas or in Texas, and everybody knows Arkansas, you have instant credibility. I can tell you, if we're looking to hire people and you come in the way you've been on the show now a couple of times, we're going to get him back on again soon. That's what we dream of the student athletes being. That's
I was listening to a sports show up here the other day, and an ad came on, and it was a guy who, they said former Razorback football player such and such, is the head of this business. And I was like, I've been covering this thing for 4 years. I don't remember that guy. And I go and look it up, and it was true. He was a former Razorback player. Now, he didn't get to play, but he was on the team. But he's able to use that in business. Might not be as profitable or as big thing this year, but you get to use it down the line. As my late friend Charles Ballantyne, when he was trying to decide whether to come up here or not, I told him very clearly, man, you could come up here, get injured, you would go to work for Walmart, and they take care of the rest of his life. Well, he came up here, had a great career. When it was over, he went to work for Walmart in their corporate office, and everything, worked out well for him. That's a situation that, you're talking about with Nathan and so many others. And even though it's become an NFL type professional business, sports is a microcosm of life, in the fact that you go to work, you get your job done, and either you're successful or you're not. And but whether you start or not, you're part of a team, and you're an important part of it, from 1 to 85.
Well, perfect example. We were at Orange Beach last month, out there. Beautiful. God, it was gorgeous down there. Met Casey Goodjohn. Got to talking to him, and Audrey and I did. And he was in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and Audrey's brother was in 26, and had a great conversation, great visit with him. He's a Aggie, Texas A&M Aggie, got a daughter in school there, lives in Claiborne County, south of Fort Worth, big, serious bow hunter. And I said, but he said, in 20 years, I was never deployed. Now, do you think you're going to tell a 20-year Marine he isn't a Marine because he wasn't deployed? It's the same thing with the guy. Well, he never really started. He didn't play. Or, my friend Jay Stubbs, whose dad, Charlie Stubbs, was the coordinator in 90,000 with Dubose. He goes, I'm a 5'7" wide receiver, walk on from Thunderbird High School in Las Vegas. And my dad gets this job at Alabama, and he played on the team there. Like, Jay, how many concussions did you get? And he goes, probably 7 I can remember. But he can go down in Alabama and go anywhere and wear that ring. That's power. It's called, you stuck it out, you grinded it out. The old Tony Allen and the Memphis Grizzlies, grit and grind. Why do you think they call the FedEx Forum the Grind House? All right, I see in the green room here Paul Lynn and Jonathan Winters here on Hollywood Squares. We're going to take a quick break. Dudley, this is great stuff. Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, The Afternoon Drive in Jackson, Mississippi, is going to join us. Let's take a break from our sponsors real quick, and we'll be right back. We got a lot of football talk coming your way.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. easy to work with, and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Back here with Dudley Dawson, hogville.net. And Dudley, before we bring Jake on, let me know how they can follow you and keep up with all your great work. And Brian Keeter, Tripp's uncle, was texting me just now saying thank you to Dudley for what you're doing. You know, that is so kind of you to help an aspiring young journalist. But I told him, I said, Dudley is an RBA, registered badass. So thank you. but before we go to Jake, go ahead and tell them how they can follow you.
Well, two things. First of all, I want to answer Walker's question in Jonesboro. Can Arkansas get to 7 wins this year? No, I don't think so. I mean, okay. It's a possibility, but is it a probability? No. Okay. As for where I work, hogville.net is our website. We cover all of Arkansas sports. I continue to cover the fall baseball and fall softball, in addition to all the other sports that we cover. FearlessFriday.com is the high school site. You know how much I love high school. I think it's the last pure bastion of sports, non-professional sports. And then obviously, how about those defending Stanley Cup champion Las Vegas Golden Knights, who got underway last night with a 4-1 win? You will find that great conversation on my Twitter or X or whatever they call it now at Dead Sports.
All right. Got it, man. I love it.
DED Sports, yeah.
DED, Dudley Eugene Dawson.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jake, you heard Dudley. We're talking, SEC football. It's something we do every day. Twist our arms, we'll do it. Thank you for having me on your show Monday. That was fun. And I realized something. I gave you my top 4, and I think I was outside by the fire with smoke coming out of my head. I left Georgia out.
I just assumed you had Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC title game.
But that's what I did. I said, that because I think that's what's going to happen.
No, it very well
Crazy
could.
as it sounds. Yeah.
Alabama's playing much better football. I mean, it's not Nick Saban football that we know. I mean, they're still a very undisciplined team on the offensive front. A lot of penalties. Jalen Milroe is starting to come into his own. I mean, they're not Alabama of 2013, 14, 2010. I think there's enough, and I hate the term parity, but I think there's enough parity where you could see Alabama even, and again, it's probably the wrong wording here, back their way in. I mean, Alabama doesn't back their way into anything, but they very well could ding Georgia.
Yeah. Jake, looking around from your position, and Dudley and we've been talking about Arkansas, Alabama, this matchup this weekend. I like this. John in Tupelo, Mississippi. Mississippi State needs to turn Will Rogers loose and scrap what they're currently doing. And then we've been talking about how Arkansas, it's midway through the season. How do you change what you are now? Because that's pretty much who you are. And as Dudley said, your record is what it is. You can't change that. But I call it coaching malpractice, because Will Rogers, and you said it, he might be lucky to get 3,000 yards this year, whereas last year 4,000 was almost, expected.
Well, look, and you see this not just at Mississippi State, but you see it in other places as well. When philosophy changes happen, a lot of times, we had Ben Troop on with you and I last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago. We talked about this. When philosophy changes happen, a lot of times it doesn't go as planned, especially early. And there's no doubt about it. Zach Arnett in that staff, they want to do a full sell philosophy change. And the days of the air raid are gone. That left with Mike Leach. And, I think what you want to see or what they want to see in Starkville is more of a play action, run game oriented type of offense. And they're struggling doing that. They don't have the personnel to do that right now. And, you can go flip, like I said a couple weeks ago, you flip and go the other side. Look at Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin brought in Tanner Mordecai from SMU. They brought in Phil Longo from North Carolina. Yeah. They did this whole flip on an air raid type deal that they wanted to run. And Mordecai has struggled, and they've had to lean, on some big time running backs that were recruited there. So, it isn't as easy a lot of times as just a straight flip. And now that you're mid-season, I don't know that you can flip back and go the other way either. So you're kind of caught in this, Pandora's box of football coaching here if you're in Starkville. And again, it's going to be a struggle for Mississippi State the rest of the way.
I want to add a couple of things here. Dan Enos here at Arkansas obviously came in as the new offense coordinator. He's changed up the offense. As we know what's happened down there with Will Rogers and Mississippi State. And I do think that it's if you bring in a guy, you develop his personality and his philosophy and all that, but you don't have to do it all in 1 year. And one of you mentioned coaching malpractice. I think that's what's kind of gone on in both places, in that you should have eased that in instead of going whole hog, to use a phrase up here with Arkansas. I mean, we all know, we see what KJ Jefferson's able to do with broken down plays and RPOs and all that, drop back passing. Why did you change up an offense? And again, the offensive line is a big key, but why did you change up an offense so much that was so good last year? Just saying.
Jake, that's a good question. Elaborate on it. I mean, you're a civil engineer, kind of break it down, compartmentalize it or whatever. But what do engineers do? You make things move.
Yeah. And look, this isn't that complicated, right? I think it's exactly. I agree as well as, when you talk about, say, for instance, Mississippi State. I mean, look, you had offensive linemen that were recruited to pass block and pass block only. Run block just a little bit. You had a quarterback that was recruited to throw the ball and throw it a lot, receivers to catch it. And then when you make a wholesale change, look, you can go back and even look at that LSU game for Mississippi State. And if you really break it down, and just kind of watch the film, if you know just a little bit about football, look, the first play of an offensive play, play for anybody is, team script plays, everybody scripts plays, first 5 plays, 10 plays, 12 plays, whatever that number may be. On the very first play of that LSU game, Mississippi State runs a stretch run play to the left side, going left to right. They pulled the right side offensive guard and tackle, and the left side tackle pulled as well, and they ran right into each other. So that is a scripted play. You worked on it all week long, and you still messed it up. I just think that, again, coaching malpractice is probably the best way to put it, as you put it, Rob. And it's very tough to take a lot of guys and to make that big of a change, a drastic of a change. Oh, and by the way, jump into the Southeastern Conference and you do that on the fly. That's very tough.
Yeah, and Will Rogers and KJ Jefferson both were really expected. As a dual threat quarterback, Jaden Daniels, KJ Jefferson is a pure passer. Will Rogers was the man. Dudley, what is your definition of a dual threat quarterback? I know that sounds really simple, but it's not what people think, in my opinion.
Well, usually dual threat quarterbacks are described as somebody who can pass well enough, that can really run the ball, but can pass well enough. Yeah. They're not a passing quarterback who can run a little bit. I think that it's the connotation is that it's a running quarterback that can pass well enough. And I think that's what KJ Jefferson is. KJ, I forget the quarterback we were talking about earlier. KJ throws a deep ball better than he does a short ball. Many times it appears, So I think he's a dual threat quarterback. Right now, he's a quarterback who's running for his life on almost every play. When he has time, he's been great this year, but he's not had time on many situations. That goes back to the offense they're running. That goes back to the offensive line. That goes back to the discipline issues we've talked about. I mean, somebody asked me earlier this week what I thought was going to happen in the Arkansas-Alabama game. I said, I'm not sure, but there's going to be 20 penalties, 10 on each team, because they're two of the most penalized teams in the country.
That's a great point. I mean, Alabama last week against Texas A&M, Jake, had 3 consecutive false start penalties. Saban is going to end up pulling
silent counts.
Yeah. And Saban's going to pull the hair out of the middle of his head if he doesn't watch it. I mean, he's Jake, I'm seeing him coach more than I've seen him coach. He's so involved now. I can't remember it. And but he's developing Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, Tighter Insider TV. We talked about it. It's a 15, 16, 17 Alabama team you're watching evolve. Would you agree?
No, 100%. I mean, and look, there's a lot of things at play here. I mean, Saban has had, a massive amount of staff turnover over the last several years, and that's going to catch up with you at some point. Not throwing anything on those assistants over there. And then there's been some misses in recruiting, and you saw some of that last year. With if they didn't have Bryce Young, they probably lose the Texas game. There's several others they probably lose as well. And Bryce Young was good enough to get you out of those situations. They don't have that now. And all that saying, Alabama could still finish 10-2. 11-1, play for the Southeastern Conference Championship. But yeah, this is not the same Alabama team. And you can tell, Nick Saban, this is starting to wear on him just a little bit.
Looking at Mississippi State, how are they going to finish? How do you see them finishing? Because last year they won. Here's I guess the question is, and it's perplexing. It's driving me crazy. They won 9 games last year. Zach Arnett's defensive coordinator. And I kept saying he knows how to coach a defense in the air raid offense. And I think the smart thing would have been to keep running the air raid, him be the head coach, but be very involved with the defense like Kirby Smart is with Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp at Georgia. Is that asking too much, Jake?
I don't know that it's asking too much, but again, when you take over a program, Zach Arnett's going to put that program in what he feels is the best image for him and his staff. Now, the offense is one side, but look, that defense is not any good. Mississippi State gives up a ton of yards in the passing game. They don't even have a real true, I think, SEC safety at this point. So there's, I got to give credit to Steve Robertson, friend of mine, 247sports.com over at Gene's page. He just put out an article. You guys,
great dude.
Yeah, great dude. Steve is a great guy. Been around that program in many, many years. And he put out a great article about the attrition Mississippi State has had in the high school recruiting, guys leaving the program all the way back through the Joe Moorhead days, which is not that far and too long ago. And so I think what you're seeing now is some of that catch up with Mississippi State, because, when you're at a school like Mississippi State, you can't have a lot of misses in recruiting. If you miss at Alabama on a player or two, you're not ever really going to see it. But if you miss at Mississippi State, then you're really going to see it. And I think you're starting to see some of that with this ball team, because defensively, they've got good linebackers that can run and play. They got a couple guys on that defensive front. Secondary wise, they're missing some guys. Up front, they're missing some depth. So, this for Mississippi State, it expands way more than Will Rogers, way more than this offensive philosophy. I think it's a total team deal, and I think Mississippi State will likely be an underdog in every game they play the rest of the way outside of Southern Miss. It's going to be they're going to have to really fight to even get close to 6 wins, I think, this year.
There's going to be a pillow fight here next Saturday at 11 a.m. between Arkansas and Mississippi State.
I would tend to agree with that for sure.
Well, I remember George Lapidus, longtime sports writer for the Memphis Press Senator, and did a sports show on Sports 56 WHBQ. When you had 2 teams that were struggling, he'd say, that's 2 dogs barking at each other. That's another old Southern term. But, man, both of y'all cover these teams so closely, and that's why we bring you on here, because you want to drill down local. A national reporter flies over at 41,000 feet and just goes, that's Kansas, isn't it? No, that's Oklahoma, whatever. They don't get it. Jake, what are your listeners? You have a great show, The Afternoon Drive, ESPN 105.9 in Jackson, and I'm lucky enough to be on there. If you ever need a hog, that's your man right there, hogville.net, the pride of Balch. Arkansas. It's a suburb of Newport, by the way. But what are they saying, the Mississippi State people? I know you cover Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss, and I'm sure you got some LSU fans down there too.
No, we got it. Yeah, it's a smorgasbord down here. Yeah, absolutely. Send me Dudley's contact info. I'd like to get him on as well to talk Arkansas football for sure and Arkansas sports. But there's a lot of frustration out of Mississippi State fans. I mean, it's a lot of frustration. And, I think when you look at it, it's a smorgasbord. Of course, the first blame is going to go to Will Rogers. That's where, most fan bases always goes to the quarterback. But it's deeper than the quarterback. And I think there's a lot of frustration. And, we talked about this in depth yesterday is, Zach Selman's going to have a decision to make here, and I do not ever condone or cheerlead for a coach to lose a job ever, and I'm not doing that in this situation. But when you look at it, Zach Selman, this is not his guy. He was hired as athletic director after Zach Arnett was promoted, and it was a very sticky situation with the passing of Mike Leach. But as Steve Robertson and I talked about it yesterday, you look down that schedule, you look into 2024, this isn't getting any better for this ball team next year. With trips, to Texas, they have to play Georgia next year. I mean, it is a very, very tough schedule with Oklahoma and Texas coming in for everybody in the league. So Zach Arnett is fighting a big uphill battle here. And again, he's going to have to coach his way out of this. They're going to have to try to hit the transfer portal, I think, in the, off season. And they're going to have to try to find some players, to fill some of these gaps. I don't think you can depend, strictly on high school players at this point. So it's a very uphill battle for Mississippi State, and the listeners are extremely frustrated with it.
Dudley?
I am so happy that Otis Kirk covers football recruiting for us. I just want to throw that out there. But these days with, and we talked about it with just having the 85 limit, not having the 25, my God, it's been unreal these past couple of years. It's just going to be the same this offseason. And especially if Arkansas goes 4-8 or 3-9 or hell 5-7, I guess, there's going to be frustration. You're going to have complete upheaval and a lot of things going out of here. I do think, as I look back on this, COVID really helped Arkansas's football team. And I say that because they got an extra year out of Grant Morgan and so many of these super seniors, and they were, able to. I mean, I really think that helped Coach Pittman, but those guys are not there anymore, and the choices after that have not been as good as they appeared to be from where we were sitting and looking at recruiting.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems to me like, Jake, also people are staying around forever. You've got guys in their mid and upper 20s still playing college football. That 6th and 7th years, and Dudley's right. You wonder when's the next rule going to come along to placate these people. I mean, guys throw a temper tantrum and a hissy fit, and they get ruled eligible right away. Used to be, tough spit. That's just the way it is. Get over yourself. We need that. We need accountability. Looking at the SEC from your vantage point, Jake, looking at Ole Miss, you watched that Ole Miss Arkansas game the other day. Quietly, ever so quietly, Ole Miss is 5-1 now, and Arkansas looked like they were going to pull it out there late. Jackson Dart, man, that guy's a gunslinger. He's a warrior. That backfield of Quinshon Judkins and Ulysses Bentley the fourth, SMU transfer. Dudley, you're right. That's another portal guy. I mean, trying to keep up with the rosters right now is like herding confetti, man. It's tough.
No, it is. It's tough. But Lane Kiffin, of course, he's been very adamant about his I guess you could say, the ability to want to use the portal, and he's going to use the portal. I mean, he's coined "come to the SIP" and all kinds of clothing type stuff with it. I mean, he's very open about the portal and the fact that he wants to be Jackson Dart, portal guy. You talked about a guy in the backfield, portal guy. A lot of guys from the portal, but Ole Miss has done a great job this year, and I think they're going to kick themselves down the road if things go well for that Alabama game and the way that second half played out. Alabama's in the driver's seat in the SEC West. LSU, they can't stop anybody, but they can score with just about anybody. So you kind of point towards that that Alabama LSU game in November again. But Ole Miss has an opportunity to have a really good year, possibly position themselves for a New Year's 6-day game. But I think at the end of the season, they're going to really kick themselves about that Alabama game and the way the second half, of that ball game played out. Now, one thing to note is a lot of people have asked, who can beat Georgia? Is there anybody in the regular season that can beat Georgia? I think there's a couple teams in the postseason that can beat them, but watch Ole Miss when they go to Georgia in November. If there's one team, I think Ole Miss offensively could cause them some problems because there's not a lot of, I guess you could say competitors on that Georgia schedule. You got to look at Florida, look at Tennessee, but I say look at Ole Miss and with Jackson Dart, they could cause Georgia some problems in November.
You froze on me there.
Yeah. Dudley, jump back in here. Sorry about that.
No, I'm saying you froze on me. I didn't know which question was. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that game as well, Ole Miss and Georgia. I look forward to most SEC games. I mean, theirs may not be dominance at the top like there used to be, I guess, but there's been a lot of competitive games, and it's been fun to watch, even if, you're covering a team that's been punchless on offense.
Yeah, and Jake, you look at Quinshon Judkins. He's not, and Yancey Porter was on Rebel Yell Hotline with us yesterday. He's not as fast as he was last year. And when you get down to it, Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, those guys, they didn't run 4.39, 4.4s. They were 4.6 to 4.7. And if you've ever run a 40, which we all have just playing around, or if you run a team, whatever, 4.6 or 4.7 still pretty damn fast. But when you compare it to Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson or Marcus Dupree, that's a different standard. But the backfield, didn't Ole Miss, Jake, last year finish second in the nation in rushing, averaging 315 yards a game?
I'd have to go back and look. I know they were in the top 5 or 10 in rushing. It could have been that high. I mean, you look at Quinshon Judkins. I mean, the year that he had last year propelled him to All-American status preseason.
Yeah.
He was right there with Blake Corum from Michigan. So, he's not, like you said, he's not a guy that's going to run. And I think we do get hung up on 40 times way too much. That's a combine thing. Now, obviously, you can't run a 5 flat or 5.1 or 5.2. But you look at Judkins. I mean, as you said, 4.6, 4.7, that's still pretty darn fast. And his vision is really good. His ability to catch the ball out of the backfield is good. He sees the hole well. He breaks. He has that cutback ability as a running back. So, he does everything right. And then he can run away from you when he gets to that second and third level.
Well, you talk about that matchup, Dudley, Ole Miss versus Georgia. I mean, that game is looming out there. The path to victory for Ole Miss against Georgia. If you can run between the tackles against Georgia, I think you can beat them. But expand on that. You made me think about something.
Yeah, and they finally have refound their big tight end, Brock Bowers. Georgia has, so I think they're a better football team now that they're throwing the ball obviously to him more. But Ole Miss has been great offensively. Arkansas went in there and he was very competitive last weekend. But let's be honest, Ole Miss wasn't as excited to have Arkansas in there as they were LSU. They weren't up for the football game. I mean, if you're being objective about that, it was a competitive football game, but it wasn't one that Ole Miss was sitting there, excited about Arkansas coming to the SIP. Speed in college football is great. And you talked about the running backs, Emmitt Smith and all those. If you get to the wrong hole quickly, that's a problem. Those guys got to the right hole, had football instincts, and did what they needed to do once they, got the football. You're talking about this 40-yard dash. I mean, I ran a 4.5 in high school. That's why I got the nickname Balt's Bullet. I thought that was just as fast as I'll get out. And then here came the 4.3s, the 4.29s at the combine and all that. If I ran it these days, you can time with a sundial.
Yeah.
I can walk it briskly. But again, speed is great. And we see it with the Miami Dolphins, especially, and some other, teams in the NFL and college. But you've got to have football IQ. You've got to have football instincts. And again, I point out that you can be really fast, but if you get to the wrong place really quickly, it's not going to help you.
That is the best description I've heard. It's like linebackers that aren't that fast. They just know where to be. What do you hear? Defensive linemen don't ever run past the quarterback. I like that. Jake, look, I know you said you had to be out right at the top of the hour, and Dudley, stay on with us if you can. We'd love for you to.
I think I'm tapping out too.
Yeah, I know you got to get
Ben
rest.
Dawson,
But
the late Ben Dawson Jr. Taught his son to show up and put in a good day's work. That's what I did this morning. I struggled, but I got there. So.
Hey, we appreciate it because you said you would try to stay on an hour. I really appreciate it. We got Mitch Davis, MitchDavisShow.com coming up. Jake, let people know how they can follow you. Dudley already let them know about his Hogville.net and Dead Sports, DED. But tag out here and look forward to your next visit. And really appreciate both of y'all sharing your time with us and our viewers all morning.
Absolutely. Just on Twitter or now X at Jake Wim. You can also find me on the zone1059.com. That's where you can stream the show, cfbhourglass.com. A lot of stuff on the social channels this time of year. Twitter, Facebook, Jake Wimberly on Wim's Winners. That's our weekly picks we put out there. Typically 7 to 10 college plays, 3 to 5 NFL plays each week. Of course, we're big in sports gaming here in the state of Mississippi. So give us a follow and check us out. And Dudley, I will be in touch with you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sounds good. And Rob, let me know, take a poll and let me know when I can quit using the phrase previously known as Twitter.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right. We're going to bring that up today. Okay. Hey, hope you get to feeling better, man. Thanks, both of you.
Man.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. All right. We're going to bring Mitch Davis, the MitchDavisShow.com on here with us right now. And Mitch, listen, man, before we get into you, let me say something about one of our sponsors, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. That's in Shelby County, folks. You know, it's so far out. It's so easy to get to quick. It's Collierville on the historic square. Charles Hall, the owner, texted me. I said, what do you got? If you look on Facebook, social media, they're bringing in boxes. It looks like Santa's workshop. We got in kids' boots, corral boots for women, Ariat jeans and boots for men. And our fall order for Schaefer Outdoors has come in. And you talk about some great looking clothes. Their largest order ever for Filson, Old South clothing, largest collection of duck head I've found anywhere. Pants, shirts, pullovers, Kimes Ranch, Vask boots, higher boots. They invented the cowboy boot. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots and some great looking women's clothing. I mean, this, you got your Western wear. This is stuff you can wear to work, wear in the boardroom, business meetings, travel. Great clothing. Charles Hall, the owner, his wife, Laura, Raven, the entire staff committed to making it a great experience. Proud to be associated with them, every damn one of them. I love them. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. And now, live from the Witness Protection Program, New Albany, Mississippi. You know what county New Albany's in, don't you, Mitch?
Union County, baby, loud and proud. Rob, thank you so much for having me on. And before we even talk about football, I do want to just take a second. I don't know if anybody or you have said this on your show yet, but I just want to offer my thoughts and prayers out to our friends and over in Israel right now as they're fighting and on the ground. I have been, no lie, I've been in prayer for them for the last several days and really just kind of sending my thoughts and prayers over to them. And I wanted to take a second on a national show to say that we stand with them, that we love them, that we pray for them. And now we can talk football, but I wanted to get that kind of out there and kind of put that out there. And hopefully that's okay with your audience.
Absolutely it is. Hey, as Father Sachi said one time at Mass at St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis, he goes, it's not about praying for what you want, like going to the store to get something. It's a constancy in prayer throughout the day, every day. That's why they have the perpetual adoration chapel at St. Louis 24/7. Somebody is in there an hour at a time. Believe me, if someone fails to show up for their shift at 3 a.m. and no one shows up till 6 or 7, you got to stand your post. And there's a reason for that. But thank you, Mitch. Don't ever worry about it. Free speech alive and well on this show. Like I say, every show. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we will not back down from being who we are. Let her rip, potato chip, as MJ says.
Man, Rob, it's always fun to come on and talk football, but I had to get that off there because it does feel like that, this football right now seems so small and minute to the national problems. I mean, we've got Memphians, we've got Americans that are being killed over there by the Hamas terrorists. And I really just kind of wanted to put that out there. And, I've been very vocal on Twitter along with Miss Rachel Barbeau, Bruce Pearl, and several others, and really just kind of wanted to put that out there and say, hey, look, my thoughts and prayers are with y'all, and we can talk about football, and I'd rather talk about football, but wanted to take just a couple seconds to bring awareness to that and kind of shine a light on that a little bit, because it is important. It is important as as a Christian like myself to support our Jewish brothers in Israel and the Israelites. So wanted to shed light to that. But Rob, it's the bye week. Mississippi State and Ole Miss aren't playing this week.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed my first 2 days of bye week. Gonna have content to start coming out today, tomorrow, Friday, and so on. But I took a couple days this week and kind of took some mental health days to just focus on my full-time job and really just kind of focus on some other things. So kind of enjoyed my first 2 days, but now we got the mid-season recap for Mississippi State coming out today, hopefully.
I got a question for you. You remember a couple of weeks ago, story broke about some guy, Ole Miss player, and his attorney from Jackson suing Ole Miss for $42 million. Heather Dinich ran with that story, ESPN, the national media. This is what they do, the drive-by, just, start a fire and just leave it, So I said, my first reaction was, none of my embedded local guys that are in Mississippi that cover Ole Miss on a daily basis are even talking about this. I talked to some of them privately, and it was, look, this kid did not respond to Lane Kiffin's text, emails, phone calls, or anything for a month. Let me tell you something, Mitch. Try doing that to your boss at the bank or anyone else like that. Your ass will be fired so fast, and you're not going to they're not going to feel sorry for you or a pity party. And Lane Kiffin and the kid, and I was told he's still on scholarship at Ole Miss, just blew him off, mental health issues. Let me tell you something. Life is tough. You're going to get your head bashed in. You're going to get called every name in the book. You're going to sometimes feel at work like you just want to slither out like a snake. That's life. You got to keep fighting. And this was an example of the wussification, of America. Look, I'm sorry. Mental health issues are serious, no doubt about it. But you don't ignore your boss. We seem to forget that a head coach is your boss, and you know what? You let them know. Damn well they have all sort of support networks and personnel at Ole Miss, and I just think it was a cheap shot at Ole Miss, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves because the kid has problems. You know what? Do it. But when you go publicly and attack them like that, I'm just curious where that story went, because I don't think it's going to have any legs. And I think all they wanted was a little nuisance settlement. That's just my take. Mitch, the reporter.
I will say that, I've heard the same things. Rob, you and I run in the same circles at Ole Miss. We know a lot of the same people. We talk to the same people. But I will say that sometimes, and I hate when this happens, but I'll take me, for example. I'm always a very transparent person. I do struggle with depression and anxiety, stuff like that. But that just comes with chemical imbalances. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes kids, especially younger than me, I'm 27 years old, kids younger than me, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, use mental health as kind of like a crutch instead of an actual, hey, this kid does have depression. Hey, he does, struggle with stuff. But this kid, he came into Ole Miss, from what I understand, he was a cancer in a locker room. From what I understand, he was not the picture perfect teammate that everybody wants him to be. That's my understanding. And I know Lane Kiffin, and I know the coaching staff, and I know what they've implemented. I know Keith Carter personally. He's a friend of mine. I know what that they've implemented in that athletic department. They're so big on mental health. They're mental health advocates, and that's what they are. I don't know exactly Lane Kiffin's story behind it, but he too, and I think he had a couple family members that struggle with mental health, and maybe one or two, and I don't know this, but maybe one or two maybe committed suicide or something of that nature. So Lane Kiffin's very big on mental health. He is a big mental health advocate. I know Miss Rachel Barbeau has been to Ole Miss to talk to them about changing the narrative. I think that this kid is just one of those one kid in the millions that, claimed to have mental health problems, but really was a product of his environment that he was brought up in. I mean, take Matt Corral, for example. Matt Corral, I don't know, Rob, if you heard this story, but a few weeks ago, right around the start of the NFL season, Matt Corral went missing. Matt Corral has a long history of mental health battles and everything. Lane Kiffin actually brought Matt Corral back to Ole Miss last weekend, and from what I understand, there was making sure Matt was okay. Lane Kiffin, he's not for everybody. He is what you expect from Ole Miss fans, but he means well. He's got a good heart. I think this kid's just really, truthfully, just kind of had one of those. He was a cancer on the team, and we see that in JUCO ranks a lot. We saw it with Isaiah Wright at East Mississippi Community College back in 15, 16. He was one of these kids that came in. He was a hell of a player, a hell of a running back. Had some problems, ended up going to a Division III school or an AIA school, got in trouble there, couldn't go back to JUCO, ended up in prison. There's a lot of different factors that go into a lot of these kids. And you just have to take it with a grain of salt. But if that's just one kid out of the, 86, 89 on the roster, then I really don't think that that's a major problem.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, John Hartwell, our good friend, the AD at ULM, his wife has a PhD in mental health, and she spends so much time working on it. The point is, you don't go out there and launch a $42 million lawsuit. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, again, yeah. And you know what? Your coach calls, he's there to help you. And that's all I'm trying to say is that you're a reporter. I'm sure you're digging around trying to get information, and that's your job. The duty of a free press is to hold those in positions of authority accountable, not to be their friends. You are not their friends. It used to be in the old days, you were elected and put on the bench as a judge. If you and the mayor were good friends, that changed your friendship. Now, people are put on because they are friends. Causes problems. Look at the NCAA. Let's see what Charlie Baker does. He's a politician. Okay? See what he does. I tell you who I'd like to see as commissioner. I'd like to see Rick Neuheisel. He has a law degree. He's an attorney. He's been on the show a number of times. He'd love to do it. Okay? Get someone who knows what it's like to be screwed over by the NCAA. Get someone who knows how non-objective they are. Because it seems that schools north of the Mason-Dixon line can do whatever the hell they want to. And all we're told is how ignorant and dumb and bad we are south of the Mason-Dixon line. Far from the truth, folks. And by God, you better pay attention. The SEC this year, it's not down. You just don't have the elite quarterbacks. But I like what Bill in Memphis says. When you're part of a team, you follow the chain of command. End of discussion. And, like you look around at a team, look at the Atlanta Braves, Billy Roberts and Frank Duffy and my friends over there, Chuck Oliver, Southern Sports Today. They'll tell you, Alex Anthopoulos, he's the brains like John Sherholtz was. Now, Alex Anthopoulos, no clubhouse cancers allowed. They don't put up with it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win the World Series. But if you're a Braves fan, for the last 40 years, pretty much, except for an occasional slide here and there, you've got the most consistent franchise in baseball. I mean, John Sherholtz, the Bobby Cox, I guess coined the phrase "the Braves way."
As a Cardinals fan, you're breaking my heart. I'm a diehard Cardinals fan, Robin.
I love the Cardinals. Don't get me wrong. I'm just
a Cardinals fan.
Yeah,
and I hate the Braves, man. I'm rooting for them because it's like one of the only Southern teams left.
Yes, it is the only. Well, Houston is.
I've got a lot of friends living in Mississippi and being around, all these people. I've got a lot of friends that are Braves fans, and look what Austin Riley did, former Mississippi State the other night. What a fantastic finish that was.
Got to ask you, didn't mean to interrupt you, but time out. Austin Riley, DeSoto County Central, the Mississippi side of Memphis. He signed with Mississippi State, but he never played for Mississippi State, did he?
I think he did. If I'm not mistaken, I think he did.
I thought he went straight to the major. But think about Ben Ingram, the voice of the Atlanta Braves on the baseball network. And I've got that app, 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Ben Ingram is good friends with our previous guest, Jake Wimberly. They all, grew up together there in Jackson. He's the voice of the Braves. And the Braves are, look, Mitch, the St. Louis Cardinals, growing up in Memphis, this is Cardinals country. So I call it the bookends. Most of our listeners are in the Southeast. Of course, they're all over the country and the world because of the web. Cardinals nation, Braves country. What if Missouri could tap in to that enthusiasm of the Cardinal nation and transfer that over to the Missouri Tigers? I've asked that to Eli Drinkwitz. All right, got a story idea for you. You talked about Keith Carter. It'd be great for you to do a story about all the stuff Ole Miss has in place, and I know other colleges do too, to support these student athletes, because they do. And it just infuriates me and I don't care what you are, an Ole Miss, Alabama, Memphis fan, whatever. You attack somebody, Lane Kiffin, the people at Ole Miss, in this case, you need to be held accountable. You're going to throw out these aspersions and these accusations. If this guy, I don't even know if he's part of the team anymore, but when your boss calls, let me give you a hint. Answer the damn phone. Respond to emails, respond to text. Okay? That you don't make the rules. Okay, you've got problems, you got to tell them. They can't read your mind. But let's get going now. When we talked a lot about Mississippi State and Ole Miss with Jake Wimberly. And Jake pointed out, we talked about Will Rogers. Dudley was talking about KJ Jefferson. Give me a grade. I was asked this on Jake's show Monday, the afternoon drive in Jackson, Mississippi. Give me your grade of the SEC, A, B, C, D, or F.
Talking about Mississippi State or talking about the SEC?
The SEC.
The SEC West, I would give a B. The SEC East, I don't like, maybe a D. Maybe. Georgia's the best team in the East, but I mean, you look at Kentucky, Rob. We talked about this last week. Kentucky's a pretender. They really, truthfully, they're a pretender. When you look at the rest of the schedule and you see how Kentucky fares against teams with winning records in the SEC over the last 10 years since Mark Stoops has been there, he's only he's only finished in the SEC twice with a winning record of 5-3. So he struggles with teams with winning records. Kentucky still has to go to Mississippi State. They still got to play Tennessee. They still got to play Missouri. They still got to play at South Carolina, at Louisville. This Kentucky team is in danger. I've had this conversation with my family, who absolutely despises my guts now because I went in there in a group chat. They asked me what my analysis was of Kentucky football, and I said, this Kentucky football team is a fraud. They just are. They look like Kentucky football did last year when they started 5-0 and then finished 7-5. This team is very inconsistent. The Devin Leary is not a good quarterback. And at this point in the season, you can only coach guys so much. And back to, Will Rogers. Look what Will Rogers has done. Under this new offensive scheme, he's terrible. Really, truthfully. And he'll tell you that. Rogers has been terrible under this new offensive scheme under Kevin Barbet. You can only teach a guy so much at the midway point in the season. The rest of the way, you just kind of have to throw up your hands and whatever happens, happens. Because when you look at both Mississippi State and Kentucky's schedules, they do not match up well for the Bulldogs or for the Wildcats.
They don't. And I saw Takeo Spikes and Alyssa Lang talking about Kentucky. And Takeo said, look, Devin Leary's only averaging 210 yards passing a game in SEC competition. I don't care what he did. Their strength of schedule was 121st out of 133 going into Georgia. And there were people thinking they could do it. First off, if you can't run between the tackles, you're not going to beat Georgia. Number two, I felt like after the scare Georgia had at Jordan-Hare, first road game of the year, that Kirby Smart would use this as a teaching week. And you know what he does? If you want to be elite, you got to be elite. And y'all were not elite. He had that team primed. That was a maximum effort. And I felt like they would not but double cover, but triple cover. Because weren't they up 14 or 17?
They're 14-point favorite. And what's crazy about that Georgia game is, and Rob, I wrote an article on Sunday talking about the sustainability of Georgia football and the sustained success that Kirby Smart has had. They held Kentucky to like 56 yards rushing, which is ridiculous. I mean, when you have a guy like Ray Davis and you have, all this different stuff that Kentucky has,
Wait a minute.
That's why I get a little bit of just fatigue with Kentucky football right
now. Here's the point, though. You got a guy like Ray Davis. He ran for 280 in Lexington at Kroger Field on aisle 7 next to Glass Eyeballs. Okay, he did it against Florida, and Florida's a mystery. They're really good at home. They struggle on the road under Billy Napier. But if you look at their recruiting class, that ain't going to be the long term. I think long term, they just got too many people on the staff, too many people, analyzing. There's more people on staff than there are players. But he got 280 yards against Florida. No, I look at a running back on how they do against the best teams, the top 3 or 4 teams on their schedule. Ray Davis has proven nothing. I mean, you again in those big games, you know what the great backs do? They get the yards.
They find a way.
He's not a great. I'm with you, Mitch. And you know what? I'm gonna put you on that list with Roman Harper. You're a truth broker. Somebody asks you a damn question, you got to tell them. If they get offended, be offended. I really don't care. You're hearing, because when you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the truth. Kentucky, this team this year, they played nobody.
Yeah.
And then they went to Georgia, and they went in and found out what they're not. If they're the second best team in the SEC East, what does that say about the SEC East? 51-13 by a Georgia team that struggled with, in the first half with a lot lesser competition.
That's not a great Georgia team.
No, it's not.
That is a good Georgia team that's probably going to win a national championship because nobody else can beat them. But this Georgia team, if they played the 2 years ago that won the national championship when Ringo caught the pick 6 from Alabama, that Stetson Bennett-led team would absolutely dismantle this Georgia team. But here we are. Georgia's still on top. But, Rob, the interesting thing about this is this seems like a broken record for Kentucky. I grew up around the program. I grew up loving UK football. This is a broken record. Every time since Stoops has been here, Kentucky will start 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, and then just cater off. I don't – and then the other day, I don't know if you saw it on his radio show, Stoops got the question from a fan. Coach Stoops, what about, if we're – what do we have to do to get over that hump to compete in Georgia? And, Coach Stoops said to pony up and to donate more money to the NIL deal. 51 points and getting beat by 40-plus is not an NIL problem. That is Georgia's just a 10 times better program. And Kentucky is where I think Kentucky is peaked. I think 8-9 wins is the standard of Kentucky, and that's a hell of a season. But they're never going to be on that upper echelon of Alabama, of your Georgias, your Auburns. Because, look at history. Historically, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn have been your premier sustained successes over the last – and LSU, over the last 100 years of SEC football.
Yeah, excuse me. Since 1963, there have been 6 schools in the SEC that have won the Southeastern Conference Football Championship. They are Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee. 6 schools. And since 2006, who won? 98, Tennessee won a national championship. And then since 98, Auburn has, Alabama, they buy them by the truckload. Florida has, Georgia has, and so is LSU. LSU's had 3 consecutive coaches win national championships. Nick Saban, Lester Miles. Wow. Lester Miles. And he had a couple other close calls. Okay. And then, and obviously Coach O won one.
Yeah.
Got to have subtitles under. I don't know what he's saying.
I don't think Brian Kelly's going to win one. I am so down on the list.
Do me a favor. Hold that thought. Hold that tiger. Hold that tiger. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back. And let me say something today. If you are out and about, get on over to Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis, Red River Ford Toyota. Rusty Howard, Greg Smith, Justin Wynn, the general manager, the great folks there. That is the Red River Auto Group, folks. John Dobbs Jr. from Memphis. The Dobbs family been in the car and truck business for a long, long time, going back to the days of James Kirby Dobbs and the Great Hull. Rest his soul. Mr. Dobbs, we lost him this summer at 91. Incredible. Working his whole life. Great people. They combined with the Ward family from Central Arkansas, Red River Auto Group, okay? In Wynne, Arkansas, over 700 cars, trucks, and SUVs previously owned, plus brand new Fords, brand new Toyotas, and a service department with 25 bays. It's like NASCAR in there. Ricky Bobby. They get you in and out of there fast. Have a great waiting room, TV, great people to work with over there. Great sales force. They don't have to make deals because it's always fair when you deal with Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. And keep in mind, they will deliver anywhere. You find the car, the truck, SUV, whatever you want online. If you connect all the dots, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, it takes about 20 minutes from that point, and you can be driving off in a new car, truck, or SUV. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Damn proud to be associated with them. And also, Mitch, you ought to see it over here. We're back and forth traveling. We're going to be heading down to Busted Down in Baton Rouge. I think we're going to head down to Baton Rouge Saturday morning for the Auburn LSU game. Torn between that and going up to Knoxville with Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report. Mark Ham and the great folks up there, Audrey's cousin, like her brother, for the Texas A&M Tennessee game, which we're going to get to in a second. But Chad House, the folks at ECS House Industries. Right now, it's harvest time. And, you know, you think you work hard. Mitch, now I know you do, and we both do because I do this and the finance part. But, you know, they got lights on those tractors and those combines and those hoppers. So you work all night. And if they know rain's coming, they might work nonstop. You know, sleep in your tractor, sleep in your combine. ECS House Industries, the Better Roller, the Pulverizer, the aerators. You see these catfish farms all over the place. They make them in a 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Delta. Chad House, love this guy. Sigma Nu Rhodes College, loves Rhodes, loves the Razorbacks. Great people to deal with. So when you see farmers out there working, harvesting right now, most of the rice is in, the beans, the corn, the milo, sorghum, millet, cotton. Think of ECS House Industries. Check them out on our website. Proud to have them as a sponsor. And again, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Be right back. Mitch, remember what we talked about before the break? Do you remember what we were going to come back to, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
That question.
Bring it on, baby.
Hold your tongue. We'll be right back.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
That was fast. All right. Let's talk about what we were talking about before we went to the break. Rob Browne back here on this Wednesday morning midweek show. Mitch Davis, host of the MitchDavisShow.com in New Albany, Mississippi. And by the way, Mitch, everybody that knows anything about New Albany knows those great cakes and everything they make down there. So don't forget that. But look,
yeah, trust me.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that place, Sugar Reed Bakery, and the Manning's or West Side barbecue cakes. Oh my God, the caramel cakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
die for, Rob. And
Yeah.
I will say before we get to talk about anything else, I got a few more minutes left. I am so excited to get down to Auburn in 2 weeks to go see Mississippi State play. This will be my first ever trip down there to Auburn. So looking forward to go covering the Mississippi State Bulldogs down there, and excited to take in everything that Auburn has to offer.
Well, let me say this real quick, because I know you got to get going. Jordan Hill is on with us right now, covers Georgia for 24/7 Sports. Jordan, can you hear us? Nope.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. He normally normally I see that microphone there, and I don't see that microphone, and I didn't know if you were connected. Mitch, now Jordan covered Auburn for about 5.5, almost 6 years. Jordan, Mitch is going down there, first time ever, got his press credentials, going to be covering the Auburn Mississippi State game coming into the month. Any tips you can give him for a first timer now that the press box is over in the corner? Man, the good old days, it used to be on the 50-yard line, but covering a team, Jordan covers Georgia for 24/7 Sports, but anything you could tell him that he might want to do or not do in that press box?
Bring binoculars would be my biggest thing. And other than that, that's kind of it. I do hate the setup at Auburn. The biggest thing for me is you can't hear the crowd. And in all the games I've covered, the 2017 Iron Bowl that Auburn wound up winning, that's the loudest I've ever heard a stadium. So it does stink from that standpoint. But yeah, I would recommend bringing binoculars, because they will come in handy, especially when they're going away from you.
Yeah. And Mitch, look, let people know, again, we run out of time. I didn't realize the time. Let people know how they can follow you. We're going to pick back up. I'm going to get you back on in the next day or two, because I want to cover more of this national thing, but let them know, because you've got some content coming out, and I'll let you get back to work.
Yeah, themitchdavisshow.com podcast, The Mitch Davis Show on SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. On Twitter, MitchDavis_8. I'm going to start cranking out some Mississippi State bye week content, also Ole Miss bye week content, kind of ranking, kind of going through the teams. And then we got a couple of the Mississippi State basketball coaches coming on the podcast earlier next week, talking Mississippi State basketball. Big thank you to Coach Wes Flanagan from Ole Miss coming on. We talked Ole Miss basketball, culture change going on in Ole Miss a little bit, and Mississippi State's going to have to figure out how to replace Tolu Smith, who has got an ankle injury and is going to be out till conference plays. So there kind of goes Mississippi State's a little bit of the excitement heading into this new season for basketball. But hey, it's going to be a part of it. Look forward to it, and it's always an honor to talk with you, Rob. I really appreciate you having me on, and y'all have a great weekend.
Get your binoculars. We'll take care. All right. All right. Jordan, I hope you're feeling okay. I know Dudley Dawson was on here in the first hour, said he's got the funk, whatever it is. Audrey is just getting over it. We were over in Atlanta after we saw you in Auburn, went up there for 3 days, and she came back feeling like, man, she had been dropped into the gates of Inferno, just whatever it was. It lasted about 3 or 4 days. And if you got it, she went and got a liquid IV at Walmart from the pharmacy, and that thing actually worked.
Yeah, I'm fighting it, Rob. Definitely not 100%, but we're grinding through it. It works out okay for the Georgia schedule. They have a bye week next week, so I'm going to do my best to catch up on a little bit of sleep next week and try to gut through this.
We'll look forward to you getting better, because I didn't see the microphone, and I was like going, hopefully didn't mean to bring you in too early, but thank you first of all for taking time. I know you're not feeling 100%. Appreciate you so much coming on the show with us, because you do great work. You put out great content, and I'm with you. I hate that double wide over in the corner they call a press box now. It's what it is. I mean, why the media, you tell the stories, and this kind of push them out of the way. And I know you can make money selling things, but you know what? Put the press box above that. If you're going to build one, instead of having to, how'd you like to be the radio guys? Andy Burcham and Jason Campbell trying to see what's going on the other end of the field in the north end zone. That's not easy. Want to talk about Georgia the other day. They made a statement, and we were just talking about Mitch. He said he's been shunned by his family. They're all Kentucky people. And he said they're a fraud. They're just not good. But Georgia exposed them And Georgia's manhood was challenged in that Auburn game. And I think Kirby Smart used that all week long. And, man, they came out and made a statement. Ray Davis, you may have run for 280 against the Gators, but you ain't going to do that against us. Georgia's still the best team in the country. They're still the national champion.
Definitely, and I think the way the schedule fell probably was for the best for Georgia, because they say year in and year out that Kentucky is the most physical game they play, just with how the Wildcats build their teams, the way Mark Stoops accumulates talent. And I think that they understood that they couldn't really mess around, that they had to show up ready to go. And I think you saw that. And, the biggest thing for teams and for Georgia this year, the biggest criticism, I think it's been fair before that Kentucky game, is that they've started super slow. I mean, I think I'd probably said it on the show last week. They'd scored 17 points total in the first quarter. And I think if you clean that up, fans would have been a lot more happy. We wouldn't have been as much criticism. Well, you turn around and I believe they scored 14 in that first quarter, kind of set the stage for that blowout. So, yeah, I think that Georgia knew that people were critiquing them. I don't think they necessarily cared, but they knew that they had not played their A game, especially on offense. And then they showed out in a big way. And it's going to be very interesting just to see how they show up. 11 a.m. local kick on Saturday in Nashville. Did they go through the motions, or they kind of do the same thing they did last week, jump on Vanderbilt early and set themselves up for a win going into a bye week?
Well, you're going to go up there against Vanderbilt. That's a game where you should win big, play a lot of people. Like this question here, Kathy in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. That is where, who's from there? Great Florida linebacker, Brandon Spikes, Boiling Springs. Talk about the Dogs' injuries. You're right. They got to play Vandy. No disrespect to Vandy, but they're not very good. They'll put up an effort, but Georgia's health, what are you concerned about on offense, defense, special teams?
Generally, they've actually gotten a lot healthier, I'd say, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, which, that feels like it's opposite what you're used to. You come into a season healthy, and as you go, you kind of get banged up. Georgia was really banged up in fall camp and tried to get guys back. Then the biggest question is Lad McConkey. Didn't sound like he practiced a ton last week. He did play a good bit. I think he played like 26 snaps. They may kind of play it conservative with him and say, look, we don't need to push the issue. I imagine we'll still see him, maybe not see a lot of him. Roderick Robinson, true freshman running back. Kirby said on Tuesday that he's doubtful. He's been dealing with a high ankle sprain that he suffered against South Carolina. Probably won't see him. No, we won't see Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, defensive end. He's been battling a foot injury. They're still hopeful to get him back before the end of the season, but we'll see if that comes to pass. And then really the only other one is Marius Mims. He won't play this week. He is working his way back. Had tightrope ankle surgery after getting hurt against South Carolina. I would imagine sometime in November they may be able to get him back. But for me, it's kind of hard to project with a guy like that. A lot of the times we've seen tightrope ankle surgeries with a tight end or a receiver. Talking about a big old guy that had surgery on that ankle. They don't want to push the issue. They don't want to bring him back just for him to get hurt. So on the whole, they're in pretty good shape injury-wise, especially when you consider where they were about a month ago, where the list was probably 15, 16 names deep.
Yeah, and injuries are always part of it. Brock Bowers, what are his stats right now compared to what they were this same time a year ago? Because he has 1,826 yards his first 2 years, 21 touchdowns, 9 carries, 111 yards, 3 touchdowns. So, almost 2,000. But number-wise, all I know is when it matters, he shows up.
That's the thing, and what will help him as we continue talking about if he will wind up being a Heisman candidate or not is he has to have games like he had against Auburn. I mean, he was the difference maker, and he led them in that fourth quarter. I mean, back-to-back one-handed catches. One of them wound up not counting, but still, we all saw it, even if it didn't count.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he's been super productive. I'm really intrigued to see how his role will continue going into the season. I actually wrote about today. Rara Thomas, who was a Mississippi State transfer, has really, really come on. And I think that Brock will continue to be that leading pass catcher, that top guy. But I'm telling you, Rob, Rara Thomas has really, really impressed, gotten a lot of praise from his teammates and from Kirby Smart. I think you're going to see him get the ball quite a bit in these next 6 games.
Ask Eric Zier about trips to Nashville, Jordan. That from Rob Anderson down in Titletown, USA. You know where Titletown, USA is.
Got to be Valdosta, right?
Yeah, the capital of Lowndes County. But, there are those games that every team has every year. Last year it was, Georgia for 57 minutes. Missouri led in that game. And then Kentucky game was fairly close. But you know what? National champions win those games.
Definitely, you find a way. And the thing to me, saying about Vanderbilt gives them tough games. Not lately, and I don't think Kirby would ever admit this, but I think that he's still not thrilled about that 2016 game where they wound up losing. They give 5'8" Isaiah McKenzie the ball up the middle when you got Nick Chubb and Zach Cunningham stuffs it and Georgia loses. I think that might have been a homecoming game. But the last 2 years, it has not been an issue. Georgia has won the last two meetings with Vanderbilt 117-0. If you want to talk about leaving no doubt, that's sort of what this series has become, at least lately. And hate it for the Commodore fans out there, anyone who might be listening, but I think it's going to be much of the same on Saturday.
Yeah, there's just certain teams. Right now, again, Vandy, I just don't understand it. I guess I have a lot more hope for Clark Lee because I like the fact that he was not too, happy to hear someone say, you had to be happy last year with a 5-7 record. He goes, no, we're not. We want better than that. But, football is just, that's why they play the games every week. What are you most concerned about in the second half, the back half of the season with Georgia? Complacency because the schedule is not considered to be that tough. You still got to play the games, or you consider overconfidence. But what are you concerned about as they keep climbing that wall toward a third straight national championship? Because it's like in the stock market, we call it climbing the wall of worry, and it weighs on you. But as I see it, this is the kind of stuff Kirby loves. This is where he's at his best. People forget he's a pretty damn smart guy. He's a graduate, isn't he, of the Terry College of Business? He and his wife both at Georgia. That's pretty damn good business school. But
definitely, I don't think complacency will be an issue because honestly, I think they haven't played the toughest part of their schedule. I mean, Florida and Jacksonville, you never know what's going to happen there. You've got Ole Miss and Tennessee in the month of November. Those are going to be challenges. Missouri coming to Athens. I think Missouri's been pretty good. Was pretty impressed with what I saw from their offense against LSU. Just a couple mistakes by Brady Cook, I think, kind of made the difference. Other than that, I think the biggest thing for me is this defensive line, and I've wrote about it a good bit. I still need to see something from them. I don't think that they get to the quarterback as much as they should. Kind of my biggest concern is just against the run, that they're not able to disrupt. Kentucky, I thought, as much as Georgia was able to shut them down, they got a pretty good push. It was just a matter of eventually they had to say, we have to start throwing the football because we can't keep up. We're not going to be able to keep up just staying on the ground with Ray Davis. So really, for me, other than anything else, it's just I got to see this defensive line rise to the occasion and show up and be ready to go.
Let's talk about Georgia's defensive line. We always say this. You've got to be 2 and 3 deep at every position on the front seven if you're going to win a championship. There's no Jalen Carter on the team, but there's still top 2, top 3 talent in the country.
Definitely. And that's the thing. They've got a number of guys, and they've rotated a bunch of those guys in. But to me, it kind of starts and stops with the interior. I need to see Nazir Stackhouse. I need to see Zion Logue. I need to see Warren Brinson. I feel like those guys can play much better than they have. I think Warren Brinson's been very good as a pass rusher, but you really want to see a guy like Nazir Stackhouse step up as a run stuffer, as a guy that can get in the backfield, get those tackles for loss. You look at that Kentucky game, they played pretty well, and a lot of it was more so the defensive line opening it up for the inside linebackers. Jamon Dumas-Johnson had either a sack and a half or 2 sacks. He played really well. Smile Munden had a bunch of tackles as well. But I want to see those guys on that front come through. I think that they've got the talent, they got the capability, but they got to show up ready to play. And I think that they need to be more productive in these next 6 games if they're going to put Georgia in a situation where they do have a chance to go back to back to back.
Yeah, and the mental part of it is just the day in and day out. Everybody, as you get closer, I mean, here we are midway through the season. course, we know football is going to be played till the middle of January. So we got well over 3 months. Just makes me feel good to say that of college football. And then you got the All-Star games. And, somebody starts around February 10th or 15th with spring practice. So we don't have to go that long without oxygen, without college football. So that's the great part about it. Although you do, and we got to get you better. And I'm gonna finish up early today because I know you're tired. You got to get rest. But, man, always love having you on. You are prepared like, again, a great trial lawyer in the courtroom. Never, you know what you're talking about. You really do. Let's look at the challenges ahead. Talk about that Georgia game up in Knoxville. Rocky Top, Tennessee tailgate report. Mark Ham, Audrey's cousin, like her brother. My friend, he's got a daughter at Georgia. She's already requested all 10 of his season tickets for that game with all of her Georgia friends coming up to his ginormous tailgate up there. We got to get you hooked up and go over there and meet Mark. He has brisket and ribs, open bar, and it's right by the torch guy there in front of Neyland. You know where I'm talking about, that guy holding the torch. Bet his arm gets tired after a while. That's a big one. That's opening day of duck season, man, November 19th. That's a huge game. Who would be most likely to be caught looking ahead in a game for that game coming up? Georgia or Tennessee?
Well, I think it's probably going to be Georgia just because that they need to take advantage of the games they got before that and the fact that they got Ole Miss coming to town the week before that. And at this point, just on what we've seen, I really think that Ole Miss game may be the bigger challenge. Now, you can't discount having to go to Neyland and what the Tennessee crowd is going to be like. But that Ole Miss team is dangerous. I kind of feel like they fooled around in that Alabama game. I think they were capable of winning that game, just didn't get the job done. But I think Georgia has to take it one game at a time, because if they get caught looking ahead, knowing that that's going to be a big challenge, I don't really care if this Tennessee team isn't as good as the one last year. Having to play there is sort of a whole nother ball game. But that Ole Miss team, I would say watch out, because if Georgia gets caught looking ahead, they may have a very tough Saturday when the Rebels come to town.
Yeah, and I like how you and Wally Butts in Winder, Georgia. Dogs are still the best, but will face tougher teams as they climb the ladder. It ain't too far from Athens. And, a bit of irony, Shug Jordan, Ralph Jordan Jr., his son, who's my friend, and his godfather was Wally Butts. More connections in that Auburn, Georgia series. And Wally Butts, my dad said, he didn't believe in water at practice, made you soft, But now you find out water makes you just, cooler heads prevail. You look at Georgia's running game. In the last 25 or 30 years, and Georgia history, and you're the first person who's ever really done this for me and our listeners and viewers, and you broke down Georgia's rivals. Because someone said the other day, Florida has more rivals than anybody. But when you think about it, in-state, Miami, South Florida, Central Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Auburn, LSU, Tennessee, they got a lot of them. But in Georgia, you're from up there. You're not from Tryon or Dalton, are you? But you've got a lot of family up there. That Tennessee's the game. Get up around Lake Hartwell and up there, it's Clemson or South Carolina. Down south, Moultrie and Waycross. Down Jackson, that Florida game. West Georgia, I guess west of I-75 and south of Interstate 85, it's Auburn. Who are you most concerned about trying to take your spot at the top if you're Georgia in the East?
In the East, I think at this point, it's kind of hard to say. Because we saw what Kentucky was and Georgia took care of business there. I guess you would have to say Tennessee, because that game's going to be on the road. I still like Missouri, but I don't know what kind of staying power they have. I have to see how they respond after that loss at home against LSU. But I think when you consider the East, it's played out about as well as Georgia could have it. Georgia's the last standing undefeated SEC team in either division. So I think when you look at the East, they're pretty clearly a tier above everybody else. It's just sort of a matter of taking care of business each Saturday and getting closer and closer to that SEC championship game.
The defense, from what you can tell from your view, limited view of practice or whatever, but in protecting everything, you got to do that. But Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp. They all three have in common they worked under Nick Saban for a long time. Those three minds, that's 6 eyeballs looking at tape. Can you name another program in America that has 3 defensive minds like that? And who was the guy that left before? Dan Lanning? Nick Saban, incredible coach. And I'll tell you, I heard a great quote from an Alabama fan. Too much GOAT talk. That's not good for Alabama. Too many assistant coaches sitting in staff meetings, with their hands, sitting on their hands, not saying anything, nobody questioning. What's Kirby Smart going to be known for, do you think? Besides, if he wins 3 straight, he's going to be on Mount Rushmore. But what about he just, the defense, it doesn't matter who the coordinator is. It does, but he's more involved, I think, than people want to give him credit for. He's a hell of a coach. I like this guy, Percy, in Commerce, Georgia. You know what it's famous for, don't you? Poultry capital of the world. Isn't that in Hall County?
I believe that's Gainesville is the
Gainesville. Okay.
Poultry, yeah.
Okay. But Kirby likes to be questioned. I really think he does. I think he loves. That's why I asked you about that Tennessee game. I think he loves being questioned. He has a degree in business, but I think he's got a master's in psychology.
Well, I think he's done a very good job, and I think he's gotten better at this, at delegating, because I was still a student his very first year, and you went to practice, and you're like, that's Kirby Smart's defense. I mean, He's coaching the defense. At the time, Mel Tucker was defensive coordinator, and, Mel was involved, but Kirby was out there, and I think in time he sort of realized, look, I've got to delegate. I've got these assistants for a reason. And you talk about what Kirby will be known for, what he'll be remembered for. One will be the success. I mean, the fact they've won 2, they may, eventually win 3 in a row. But look at the coaching tree. I mean, look at Dan Lanning, look at Sam Pittman, Shane Beamer, and more guys to come probably. I think eventually Glenn Schumann will get a chance to be a head coach. Maybe Del McGee, Todd Hartley probably get a chance to be a head coach.
Yeah.
I think he's done a very good job of delegating, letting his assistants do their jobs. And I think it's helped those guys become better coaches. And I think in time they'll get a chance to be head coaches elsewhere, and we'll get to see what kind of success they have.
Yeah. About 4 years ago, Mallory was sent us a text, and they were up on Lake Oconee. She and now her husband Tyler and their dog Samson, and they ran into this guy, and that was Kirby. Coming up there, and he looked at her and he goes, "Are you a fan?" She goes, "Yes, I am." She goes, "I'm a fan of you." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, when I was a freshman at Alabama," she went to St. Pius X in Atlanta. She goes, "You were in your first year at Alabama. So I've always been a fan of you, but I'm a fan of Alabama." It was funny, but I mean, people that are around him really like him. And I saw the president, Dr. Moorhead, is that it, of Georgia, on the Feinbaum show Friday. And he said that Kirby Smart and his wife have a classroom named after them in the Terry College of Business. That's pretty cool. I mean, to be able to say that, but he has got this right now. I like it. He loves to be questioned. Look, I know you are, worn out. We're go ahead and wrap up a few minutes early. Let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you, and man, get well soon. I know, are you going to go to Nashville or try to make the trip?
Yeah. I will be. I will be there. Hopefully, we'll be nice and drugged up before then. The next couple of days, hopefully, be feeling better. But dogs247.com on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at dogs247, and only the second road trip of the year. It's kind of hard to believe this point in the year, but looking forward to going to Nashville and seeing how this game plays out.
Yeah, that's a fun place to be. Just the traffic. I don't even know what's the crowd going to be. Can they hold 26,000 or something like that?
I don't know, but there's going to be a lot of red in it. I can promise you that. Right?
Yeah, it will be, man. Hey, look, I'll let you go ahead and go, and look forward to you next week. Get well. All right, wrap up the show today. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the most blessed country in the world. Every day, go out and think about what you can do to positively impact other people. Kind words, kind deeds, follow through, accountability. Go out and make it happen. To all of our listeners, our viewers, and our sponsors, thanks so much for tuning in. It is a blast doing this show. 2 hours runs by in a flash. We got a great show in store for you tomorrow, covering SEC and your favorite team. But, man, appreciate all the comments and questions from everybody coming in. Do us a favor, support all of our sponsors. Again, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, Tom Martin's Body Shop. I was in there yesterday talking to Tom and the folks in the front office. Let me just tell you this. They do great work, broken windshields, windows, car repairs, body work. Tom has a dozen people on staff there, great people. He's been there 46 years. G.E. Patterson and B.B. King, downtown Memphis. The paperwork and all for the insurance, they make it really easy. And I'm telling you, Tom Martin's Body Shop, they're on our website. Tom Martin, I've known Tom 28 years, one of the finest people you'll know, a Mississippi State Bulldog for life, and then 3 sons that graduated from the Hill up in Knoxville. But anyway, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and make a great things happen every day. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here.